This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. Yeah, it's a little dim, dark, and overcast out where I am, but, it's beautiful in its own way, I suppose. Sure, why not? Trying to be a little bit light, no pun intended, because, boy, oh boy, we got not fun news to go through today. But I'll get to that momentarily. First, who's joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning? Random American, good morning. Noah Asensio, good morning. Mike R., good morning. Mike Savage, Blarg. Simon Willikins, good morning. Keeverdam, good morning. Funtime Bats, good morning. Captain Frost, good morning. Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. Spoonie the Rebel, good morning. Robert Pincus, good morning. Old Guy Gamer, good morning. TF the Oryx, good morning. Good morning. Mooring? What am I, like, tying up a ship or something? I don't know what I'm doing. Zan Wild, good morning. Resolute Germ, good morning. Ercole Di Stefano, good morning. Zero the Hero 909, good morning. You're Ridiculous Lunatic, good morning. TC Lachance, good morning. And good morning to anybody who is lurking or in the future. Yeah, so I usually don't do a Border Digest more than maybe once a month. But man, oh man, the last week in particular, yeah, a lot of things have been happening in the last just several days in particular, but the last weeks for sure. And so I've got a few articles to try to bring us up to speed as to what's going on. I've got them in chronological order, and those things that jumped out at me as interesting. So I'm going to go through them. We're going to learn what is happening in the world of immigration and the border at present, and revel in the madness, I guess. I'm not quite sure what else to do about it. Just one of those things. It's like I want to keep up to date because for those of you that might be new to the channel because of the AAA meeting, and welcome to the channel, by the way, I've been looking at immigration, border issues, and things like that at least as long as my channel has been around just about. So I have a playlist on my channel called Expatriate Games, where during the course of the Trump administration in particular, but certainly the Biden administration since, I've been keeping track of different stories and different events in the whole border saga of recent years. And so this is just one more entry into that, but I don't know. Something feels different about this current time and place. Things seem to be getting a bit more to a boiling point than ever before. But I suppose we'll find out as we go, and we'll find out today. Megan Ring, good morning. Ebony Williams, good morning. Shortline 819, good morning. And good morning to you all. All right, so let's start off with a little bit of a level set posted on September 12th, going back a couple of weeks. But just so that we know ahead of time that this information was not some unknown trivia to anyone around the world or otherwise. U.S.-Mexico borders, deadliest migration land route. Geneva, Berlin, San Jose. That's quite a variety. The International Organization for Migration, IOM, documented 686 deaths and disappearances of migrants on the U.S.-Mexico border in 2022, making it the deadliest land route for migrants worldwide on record. The figure represents nearly half of the 1,457 migrant deaths and disappearances recorded throughout the Americas in 2022, the deadliest year on record since IOM's Missing Migrants Project began in 2014. The data comes from IOM's MMP Annual Overview, which underscores the growing death toll and increasing risks that migrants face throughout the region. These figures represent the lowest estimates available, as many more deaths are likely to go unrecorded due to lack of data from official sources. And if you'll recall, the last Border Digest I did, one of the articles there mentioned how to this point, I think it was something to the effect of 500 deaths had been recorded on the border as of, I want to say, August. I might be off by a little bit. So we're not even halfway through the year at that point, right? Just a little bit over. The year still has many months left and already at 500, whereas in 2022 is at 686. So I guess we'll see what happens. Real quick, thank you so much, A2P. Did you hear Kathy Hochul flipped on migrants? Oh, we're getting there. Don't worry. I've got it. We're getting there. Oh, New York. New York, New York. Thank you, A2P. Also, before I forget, at the top of the chat box, helpfully provided by Kivernam, the links to the fundraisers for our various friends and people of concern, such as it is. First and foremost, there is a link there to Maddie, another YouTuber. She has been diagnosed with cancer and needs some help with some deductibles for her cancer treatment. If you take a look at that one in particular, please do. She needs just a little help. She's got the pictures of the bills for her deductibles up on the GoFundMe page as evidence of this is the amount I need and nothing more. Please take a look at that. Donate if you can. Secondly, we have Lisa and her boyfriend need some help paying for their dog's surgery. So if you take a look at that one, please. Moonshock, a longtime viewer of the channel, has just recently survived his second bout of cancer. And obviously there are medical bills to go along with all of that. So you take a look at that one. And lastly, Angry Illinoisian is on workers' compensation because of an injury, and his family needs some assistance as well. So again, please take a look at those. Donate if you can. If you can't, that's fine. But if you can, share those out on social media. That is also appreciated. So thank you so much. And thanks to Kiverdam, again, as always, for providing those links. All right. Quote, these alarming figures are a stark reminder of the need for decisive action by states, said Michelle Klein-Solomon, IOM Regional Director for Regional Director for Central and North America and the Caribbean. Regional Director for Regional Director? So she directs the directors? I suppose. Sure, why not? Quote, enhancing data collection is crucial. Ultimately, what is needed is for countries to act on the data to ensure safe, regular migration routes are accessible, unquote. Although the data shows that deaths and disappearances in the U.S.-Mexico border decreased by 6% from the previous year, the 2022 figure is likely higher than the available information suggests due to missing official data, including information from Texas border coroner's offices and the Mexican Search and Rescue Agency. Nearly half, 307, of the deaths on the U.S.-Mexico border were linked to the hazardous crossing of the Sonoran and Chihuahuan deserts. I'm probably mispronouncing all that. Far more than other desert regions where irregular migration is prevalent. At least 212 people died in the Sahara Desert in 2022, but the remote nature of such areas means that data is likely incomplete. Yes, so again, 686 for 2022 is just the deaths they know of and have been recorded correctly. There's likely a lot more. And as I said earlier, in the last Border Digest, I believe it was something like 500 deaths had been recorded as of the middle of this year, and that number is likely far more, which means that more likely than not by the end of the year, and especially with current events, that figure will go far beyond 2022. Migrant deaths in the Americas in 2022 by sub-region. North America, Central America, Caribbean, South America, and North America. Yeah. One of the most concerning trends was the increase in deaths on migration routes in the Caribbean, with 350 documented in 2022 compared to 245 in 2021, and fewer than 170 recorded in all prior years. People from the Dominican Republic, Haiti, and Cuba accounted for the highest number of migrant deaths in the Caribbean. Okay, now we're moving away from the U.S.-Mexico border. Okay, so that's just a level set. 2022, 686 deaths. And it is the deadliest on record in relation to all the other global migration routes. So, a grim figure, but let us keep that in mind as we continue. And that was from September 12th. A little bit of a level set. Now let's move on if the internet will approve here. Okay, now is Fox News going to put up a big pop-up that's going to cover the screen? They usually do. Are they? Yes, no? No? Okay. This comes from September 16th, 2023, just 4 days later. Woman dies after falling from U.S.-Mexico border wall, officials say. Incident happened in broad daylight Friday. I did a story on this, I want to say last year, I think it was. And it was something, I titled it something like The Law of Gravity or something gallows humor-ish, talking about how many people had been killed or horribly maimed in trying to climb these border barriers, and how specifically the health infrastructure of California was being just inundated with dozens and dozens of horrendously injured people or deaths because of this. And of course, the people coming to these hospitals, they don't have any insurance, they don't have any documentation, they just show up, and overcrowding the medical resources of California. But they can't do anything about it because it's a sanctuary state, right? A woman was found dead following a fall from the U.S.-Mexico border wall in Otay Mesa, California officials say. The incident occurred around 2:30 p.m. Friday, 2:30 in the afternoon. Police say the woman successfully scaled a 17-foot wall before falling from a secondary one that is 30 feet tall. Quote, people more and more are facing traumatic, life-altering injuries when they fall, and they injure themselves or death, as the case of this woman, unquote. Immigration volunteer organizer Pedro Rios told Fox 5 about the news that has spread quickly on the border. They're facing traumatic, life-altering injuries when they fall. Well, I know this is a rough one, but maybe if you see a 17-foot tall and then a 30-foot tall barrier in front of you, the signal might be, they don't want you trying to come in. How much more of a disincentive do you need? According to the Mexican consulate, fatal and significant injuries since the 30-foot border wall was erected are up 162% in the last 3 years. Quote, they anticipated, I believe, that border falls would occur and that would be a deterrent, and we don't see that actually happening, Rio said. Well, I don't know what to tell you. You can't fix stupid. However desperate people are, setting aside common humanity, you can't fix stupid. Border Patrol agents in San Diego have been releasing hundreds of illegal immigrants onto city streets as it struggles to deal with a surge of migrants into the area just after similar releases had started in Arizona. Let's keep this in mind. This is back on September 16th. Just releasing undocumented people, unvetted, into the cities. Video out of San Diego shows hundreds of migrants being released from buses with migrants from China and Pakistan onto the streets. A conversation in the video shows a migrant speaking to a Border Patrol agent who tells him he can do whatever he wants now. Quote, you're free to go on and do whatever you want. You're free, the agent says. It's no problem if I go to Chicago, the migrant asks. You can do whatever you want, the agent says. Both New York City and Chicago have been sounding the alarm about their troubles with coping with the number of migrants that have come their way, either by themselves or with the assistance of Texas, which has run a busing program to quote-unquote sanctuary cities. New York City Mayor Eric Adams recently warned that the crisis threatens to, quote, destroy, unquote, the city as it copes with over 110,000 migrant arrivals since last year. The woman's death remains under investigation. Well, I'm pretty sure the culprit was gravity. So there you go. That was September 16th. Let's move on now. Again, we're going chronologically. I think in this last time I did a little bit of jumping around for the sake of fun, especially in looking at what New York was saying back in 2021 and what they're saying now. Before I get too deep into the next article, let's check out the chat real quick. Oh, I was going to play a video. Don't play a video. Don't play a video. Thank you. Let's see. Ercole Di Stefano. Wonder why they don't send any migrants to Detroit. There's nothing. Detroit? What are you, inhumane? Exhumed legume. How much more of a disincentive do you need? Automated sentry guns. Yeah, well, I mean, it's sad. It's ridiculous. It's so wasteful. Absolutely wasteful. And we got other stories upcoming. It just gets worse. All right, so this is from September 18th, 2 days later after the border fall on the wall. As shelters in Mexico swell, migrants rush to the U.S. border. Quote, we have a capacity of 80 migrants, and now we have 300, unquote, says the subheading. 5 months since the end of Title 42. And for those of you that don't know what Title 42 is, I have a video and several streams talking about Title 42 in the past. A policy that had allowed the government to quickly expel migrants without letting them seek asylum. Apprehensions are up 30% on the U.S.-Mexico border. One of the reasons behind the rise, which was reported by the Washington Post, might be the overflowing migrant shelters in Mexico City, as well as what migrants say is a faulty app that they're supposed to use to seek asylum. Yes, we've heard about this app many times before. Quote, we have a capacity of 80 migrants, and now we have 300, unquote, said Samantha Hernandez with Cafemin, a shelter run by the Josephine Sisters. The Josephine Sisters? It sounds like a singing act from the 30s, okay? Cafemin is just one of 5 shelters that serve immigrants in the entire city, 620 miles away from the nearest border crossing. Quote, we receive people from El Salvador, Venezuela, Haiti, Afghanistan, Russia, unquote, one worker at the Casa Toshan shelter told NBC4. Workers, they added, scramble for gym mats to use as beds for their jam-packed shelter. Okay, quote, the last month we had 100 migrants, said Gabriela Hernandez Chalte, the shelter director. She said CBP-1, an app created by the U.S. government that schedules appointments at border posts for migrants who seek asylum, isn't working. And even if it was, it only has a limit per day of like 1,400 appointments. 1,400 appointments when you've got upwards of many, many thousands more people waiting. Only a handful of migrants got appointments, she said. Quote, I think there were like 6 or 7, unquote. The Biden administration says the CBP-1 app is working, and they've upped the daily appointments to 1,450 a day. Wasn't that exactly what it was the last time I read about this? Or did they just go up by 50? The 1,400 was in my mind, obviously. Okay. Migrants who want to seek asylum in the U.S. are being discouraged from crossing the border on foot. And are instead being told to schedule appointments using the app. Those who cross the border without permission and are turned back face a 5-year ban on re-entering the country. Oh, and how effective is that? Oh, so you attempted to cross the border illegally. Okay, well, now you face a legal consequence if you try to enter the country again illegally. And if I try to enter the country again illegally, what happens? Oh, I get banned for 5 years? Oh, okay. And then I try to enter. I just have to get it right once. You can ban me as much as you want. I'll just keep trying. What is a ban if I'm trying to get... You expect me to follow the rules you put down after I've been caught? What? Oh, my God. It is a risk David Friorio from Peru said he will take. Well, of course, there's no downside. Legally speaking, I mean, life and limb is another question, but legally speaking, what's the downside? He escaped criminal gangs in his native country and had to sleep on the streets in Mexico City for weeks until finding space at one of the shelters in August. He won't wait for the app to work and vowed to cross over without documentation. Quote, on Saturday, Virgin Mary willing, I'm going to the border to turn myself in, Friorio said. Turn yourself in? Okay, well, they'll turn you back around and kick you out again. What? Quote, we don't have a phone to do it, said Yulzita Hayos, I don't know how to say that, a Venezuelan migrant who was traveling with her son and nephew's family. Please don't tell me you're going to try to cross the Rio Grande. They've been in Mexico for 15 days and had to sleep in the streets until finding space in a shelter. Quote, here in Mexico, they stole from us. They cut me here to take my purse, Hoyo said, showing off her left forearm. Without a smartphone to access the CBP-1 app, Hoyo said she has no choice but to travel the border and cross. She will be among a record number of migrant families who crossed in August. That month, the U.S. Border Patrol said it arrested at least 91,000 migrants who crossed as part of a family group. 91,000 migrants. Boy, you know, I know there are people out there who take advantage of the friends and family program in most cell phone companies, but 91,000 as part of a family group? Holy cats. Also, I'll go to the chat real quick. Good morning, Shadowclaw, and good morning, Misinformation. If I didn't miss anybody else. Tall Person, good morning. All right. Rotten Corpse, good morning. All right. So that was from September 18th. Shelters in Mexico swell. People are rushing to the border. All right. Let us march on through time. Again, September 18th. This page is not available. Oh, it removed the page. What? What? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. 1 second here. Wait a second. That was one I really wanted to look at. Hold on a second here. I got to find that article again. Apologies. Apparently CBS removed that article. But why? Uh-oh. Is my internet dying? Am I roboting by any chance or something? I'm suddenly getting no response from Google. Uh-oh. This isn't good. Uh-oh. I'm fine. I sound fine. Okay, then why can't I... Hold on a second here. Let me try something else. Yeah, so I'm getting some kind of search error on Google. And sometimes that tells me that either my internet or my VPN is causing me some kind of grief. Okay. Yeah, okay, there's the article. Did CBS just delete it? No, they didn't. Then why did it do that? That is so bizarre. Let's see if can I do that now? Okay, now it works. That was bizarre. Sorry, guys. I don't know what that was all about, but no video. Thank you. Okay. Live television, everyone. There you go. This is from CBS News on September 21st, so 3 days ago. Migrant crossings soar to near record levels, testing Biden's border strategy. What is Biden's border strategy? Well, Title 42 had an expiration date on it, and they had plenty of warning about it. And what has been done since? Let's find out. Washington, the number of migrants apprehended by U.S. immigration agents after crossing the southern border illegally has soared to near record levels in September, posing a major test to the Biden administration's migration strategy, unpublished federal figures obtained by CBS News show. Unpublished federal figures? How did you get that stuff? Unpublished? Okay. Border Patrol agents apprehended roughly 140,000 migrants who crossed the U.S.-Mexico border without authorization during the first 20 days of September, an average about 6,900 each day. According to the internal agency data, that represents a 60% increase from the daily average of 4,300 in July. The agency is on track to record more than 210,000 migrant apprehensions this month, which would be the highest level since December and May of 2022, when Border Patrol reported over 220,000 apprehensions, the current all-time monthly highs. During those record-setting months, Border Patrol apprehended more than 7,000 migrants each day, a level September's average is close to matching. On Wednesday alone, Border Patrol processed nearly 9,000 migrants, the data shows, a daily apprehension level not seen since 10,000 migrants crossed into the U.S. illegally per day during several days in May, before the Biden administration discontinued the Title 42 pandemic-era limits on migration. Moreover, U.S. border officers have been processing roughly 1,500 migrants at official ports of entry on a daily basis, mostly under a Biden administration system that allows prospective asylum seekers in Mexico to secure an appointment to enter the country through a government phone app known as CBP-1. Well, roughly 1,500, it's actually 1,400 or 1,450. Roughly 1,500, they got a limit of 1,450 a day. The spike in illegal border entries is a significant setback for a web of policies the Biden administration initiated in the hopes of slowing down U.S.-bound migration. Over the past 2.5 years, Border Patrol has recorded unprecedented levels of migrant apprehensions, including 2.2 million in fiscal year 2022, a tally that is on track to being matched in fiscal year 2023, which ends at the end of this month. Can you imagine why? Just for a moment, can you imagine why that might be? What kind of messaging, what kind of rhetoric, what kind of propaganda was pumped out into the ether during the course of the 2020 election that may have encouraged people to think that they just have to come to the border and they're set? Not that people weren't already doing that, but to encourage even more people to do that. Do you recall, I seem to recall this image of several Democratic presidential candidates standing on a stage being asked as to whether or not they would open up the border, and most of them raising their hands in the affirmative. You remember that? I remember that. Pepperidge Farms remembers that. And wasn't Kamala put in charge of finding the source of all this and routing it out? How did that work out? Following the end of the Title 42 public health expulsions in May, the Biden administration implemented a set of policies to discourage unauthorized entries. Are you going to tell us what they were? The strategy has consisted of redirecting tens of thousands of migrants to enter the U.S. each month through legal migration programs, including the app-powered process, while imposing higher asylum rules for those who cross into the country unlawfully. Okay. First and foremost, your app is only available to those that have phones in the first place. Your app has a bottleneck of 1,450 appointments per day when CBP is encountering up to 3,000 or 4,000 people per day in apprehensions. So not exactly dealing with the problem. And then, oh my gosh, are you setting rules higher for people who cross into the country illegally? People willing to break the law to get into the country, you're going to put more rules on. Okay. Administration officials touted the strategy when illegal border crossings dropped below 100,000 in June, a 2-year low. Yeah, they were really excited about that. About 2 border digests back. Man, they were really excited about that drop. Look at what we've done. We've cured everything. 2 months later. But the trend was quickly reversed in July when unauthorized crossings increased to 133,000, a 33% month-to-month jump, if you can believe the math. In August, Border Patrol apprehended roughly 180,000 migrants, according to preliminary agency data. In August alone, simply in the month of August, 180,000 migrants apprehended. And their border app does how many again per day? The increase in migration is happening across the Western Hemisphere. Sure, but we're talking about U.S.-Mexico border, but okay. In August alone, more than 80,000 people crossed Panama's Darien Gap, a monthly record for a roadless and mountainous jungle that has become a major transit destination for hundreds of thousands of migrants hoping to reach the U.S. each year, according to Panamanian officials. Yes, and how many people end up dying on the way? Yes, a roadless, mountainous jungle. You know, the recorded number of deaths by IOM, 686 as of 2022 for trying to get to the U.S.-Mexico border. It's a much bigger number, much bigger number. Influx strains federal and local resources, you don't say. The spike in migration has strained federal and local resources. In some areas of Arizona and Southern California, Border Patrol has recently found itself forced to release migrants into communities to prevent overcrowding in facilities. To release undocumented and unvetted migrants into communities, you say? Oh, good. Last month, Border Patrol agents in Texas temporarily separated children as young as 8 from their parents, citing concerns about overcrowding in a facility, a federal court-appointed inspector found. In the Texas border cities of El Paso and Eagle Pass, and we'll be hearing more about Eagle Pass certainly in the next few articles, federal border officials have suspended processing of commercial trucks and vehicles at some international bridges, so agency employees can be diverted to help process migrants. The mayor of Eagle Pass this week, remember this is just a few days ago, issued a disaster declaration, citing the daily arrival of thousands of migrants to the small city. On Wednesday, the Biden administration announced the Pentagon had approved a plan to send an additional 800 active duty troops to the southern border to provide logistical support to border control. Roughly 2,500 troops are already stationed there performing operational tasks, not arresting migrants. Yeah, so we've got troops down at the border effectively doing clerical work to alleviate the actual Border Patrol officers from having to do the clerical work so they can go out and arrest people. Now, we're not having troops arrest migrants because that would look bad, I guess, and probably break some kind of rule or whatever. So we've got troops doing office work. The administration also said it would increase deportations of migrants, including by expanding a fast-track removal program for families that requires the heads of households to comply with a nightly home curfew and wear an ankle monitor while officials determine whether they could qualify for asylum. Sure. Thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk, for the happy, smiley, dancy Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowee, wow, wow.
That Dogcat Fox took a second or two to come up. I guess a StreamYard had to warm up the video. Thank you so much, Mr. Tickletrunk. Hope you're having a good day. Also, good morning, Darren Root, a Scanner Daftly, and anybody else I missed in the meantime? I may have. Kiro Soldier, good morning. If I missed anybody else, I hope to find you later. Okay, so it would increase the deportation of migrants, including by expanding a fast-track removal program for families that requires heads of house. Okay, so wait, you're doing a fast-track removal program for families, but you're letting them stick around to find out whether they could qualify for asylum. Okay, I'm confused. Since the end of Title 42 in May, the U.S. has deported or returned 253,000 migrants to over 150 countries, including 36,000 parents and children processed as families, the Department of Homeland Security said Wednesday. During the same time period in 2019, the department said it carried out 180,000 deportations and returns. Great. The impact on cities. Let's see if we get into this now. The influx in illegal crossings has also impacted large cities in the northern U.S., mainly New York City, which for months has struggled to house tens of thousands of destitute migrants in need of shelter. The city has set up migrant shelters in over 200 hotels, tents, and other facilities, but has regularly demanded increased federal funds and support. Yeah. As we saw in the last digest, remember the long and heady days of 2021 when Alejandro Mayorkas of the Homeland Security came to New York and other cities such as it and said, hey, guys, we're not the Trump administration. We really need your help in dealing with this migrant crisis and working with CBP and ICE to mitigate this problem. And New York folded its arms and said, no. We are more morally enlightened than you are. Jump ahead 2 years, and here we are. New York's about to be destroyed, according to its mayor. It's so darkly humorous. On Wednesday, the Biden administration granted a long-standing request from New York and other cities receiving asylum seekers, offering nearly 500,000 Venezuelans migrants. 500,000 Venezuelans migrants? That's Venezuelans plural? Okay. Venezuelans migrants an opportunity to work and live in the U.S. legally under the Temporary Protected Status Program. Only Venezuelans who arrived in the U.S. before the end of July will qualify for work permits and deportation protections. Why? Why Venezuela? And I'm not being facetious when I ask. I still don't know. I've heard about it. I don't know why specifically Venezuela gets this special treatment. While there's a July 31st cutoff date for the TPS program for Venezuelans, some government officials have long feared that expanding the policy risks encouraging more migrants to enter the U.S. illegally. You don't say. You don't say. Declaring yourself sanctuary cities, offering free shelter, free food, free jobs, on and on and on is not going to attract more people putting their lives at risk. their children's lives at risk. It's not going to encourage the smugglers and the traffickers from selling the idea to desperate people to just join them, give them money, and come along on this trip through the jungle. You don't think? Gosh, wow. Thanks so much. There's other stories we'll get to momentarily. Let's see. Government officials have long feared that expanding the policy risks encouraging more migrants to enter the U.S. illegally, even if they are not eligible for the relief on paper because of misinformation by smugglers. Uh-huh. And who has been pushing this trend for years? In a recent interview, former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, who left the agency after a few months in the Biden administration, said the spike in illegal crossings this summer stems from the U.S. releasing large numbers of migrants into the country with court cases that typically take years to complete. Migrants who are released, Scott said, can tell family and friends in their home countries that there are higher chances of being released into the U.S. and staying in the country for years if they cross the border illegally. Biden administration officials have said the high levels of migration mainly stem from dire conditions in countries like Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, which has seen millions of its citizens flee economic calamity and political tumult in recent years, mostly to resettle in other South American nations like Colombia. During a briefing Wednesday, a senior DHS official also faulted smugglers for the recent increase in migration, saying they, quote, spread rumors, unquote, that, quote, drive people to cross into the U.S. illegally. They aren't rumors if they're true, are they? They're not rumors if they're true. If California, if Denver, if New York City, and on declare themselves to be sanctuary states or sanctuary cities, and you just have to make it in there. And we promise we will not work with federal officials to deport you. Plus, we have housing and food and jobs and on and on and on. It's not rumors anymore, is it? DHS official. Unnamed DHS official. Oh, man, this is just... Can't tell. I'm a little irritated. A little irritated. Oh, I did a, in my expatriate games playlist, there's a, one of the videos was specifically about this one town. I think it was, well, it was something, I think it was like Contra Costa, I think. Anyway, it was this story about this little town in California and its efforts to not work with federal officials when it came to immigration issues. And they felt they had been lied to by the federal officials. They got all emotional over that. And I'm just thinking, you guys are the ones who have pushed this. You guys are the ones who have fed into desperate people's hopes and dreams. You're helping this. Desperate people would always try to find a way into America, certainly. Fine, that's always happened. But the glut, the influx, the spike, and on is the result of the last 3 or 4 years of rhetoric and amping up of moral grandstanding. As we saw with New York and other cities back in 2021, when even the Biden administration, Alejandro Mayorkas, hat in hand, went to these cities and these mayors and these governors and said, please work with us. We swear we're not as bad as the Trump administration, but we really need you to help us and work with ICE and federal officials. Nope. We're better than you. Anyway, let's move on to an article from PBS. Let me see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. Maybe not how much. Okay, that's better. Okay. What's behind the influx of migrants crossing the U.S. southern border? I don't know. I'm glad PBS is doing the yeoman's work that Kamala Harris was meant to do at the beginning of the Biden administration. Right, finding the origins of the, okay. Again, this is from September 21st, so just 3 days ago. Washington, AP, a small town on the Texas border, declares a state of emergency as tens of thousands of migrants cross the border. The Biden administration grants protection to nearly 500,000 Venezuelans in the country, giving them the ability to work. This comes after some Democratic mayors and governors warn that growing numbers of migrants in their care are busting their budgets. The various scenarios playing out across the country paint a picture of a strained immigration system. Paint a picture? Dude, it is a digital photograph. It is not some impressionist work. It is a high quality HD digital photograph of reality. Okay, paint a picture of a strained immigration system making an impact far from the U.S.-Mexico border. The Biden administration late Wednesday announced measures intended to alleviate the problems. The U.S. has had immigration surges before, so what's different now and why? Well, let's find out. Let's find out from PBS. PBS doing what our vice president was supposed to be doing this whole time. How does the number of migrants arriving now compare to previous decades? Part of the issue is that a lot more people are coming to the U.S. Roll credits. Really? The numbers dropped earlier this summer after pandemic-era migration rules ended and tougher enforcement measures kicked in. But the numbers are climbing again. Well, then I guess those quote-unquote tougher enforcement measures didn't mean much, did they? Or was the pause because nobody knew exactly what the Biden administration was going to do and things slowed slightly until they could figure out that there really wasn't anything preventing them? You think that might be more psychology than policy? On Wednesday, the border town of Eagle Pass, Texas, announced a state of emergency after nearly 6,000 migrants crossed the Rio Grande River from Mexico into the town of roughly 28,000 people in 2 days. So the city of Eagle Pass had an increase in its population by 1/4, there's inside of 2 days. Okay, good. And that's just on Wednesday. It's not like Eagle Pass hasn't been dealing with this for months. That's just the latest influx. In fiscal year 2022, Border Patrol encountered 2.2 million people crossing the border illegally. The numbers have gone down in the fiscal year ending this month, about 1.6 million so far, but that's still high. Yeah, you don't say. You have to go back decades to see comparable numbers. From 1990 to 2006, Border Patrol encounters nearly always topped 1 million a year, with a peak of 1.6 million in 2000. Then the numbers began to fall. From 2010 to 2020, the agency recorded below 500,000 encounters a year, except for 2019 when they climbed to 859,501. Why? Okay, statistics aren't always a perfect measure, of course. Of course! The numbers from the 1990s and 2000s are considered vast undercounts because migrants often evaded authorities as they entered the U.S. Now, migrants often turn themselves in so they can request asylum. I think if you cross the border illegally, you get deported. You didn't follow the rules, you get deported. If you go to a port of entry, if you do all the official stuff, yes. If you're caught crossing the border illegally, yeah, you can request asylum. You should not be put through the process. You should be deported. I know, I'm heartless. What can I say? In recent years, the measures used to contain the COVID-19 pandemic skewed the count. The government relied heavily on a public health tool called Title 42 to quickly eject people from the country. But there was no penalty, so experts say migrants returned again and again, thus pushing up the statistics. Yeah. What are you going to do if someone is willing to break the law to get into the country and you say, you're kicked out again and we ban you? How many times have we seen instances of someone having committed some major heinous crime in this country, discovered to have been here illegally, and that it was their 4th or 5th time having entered the country? There's no downside. The only downside is the risk to life and limb. What's the government doing? The Biden administration late Wednesday announced it was giving temporary protected status to an estimated 472,000 Venezuelans who arrived in the country as of July 31st. That makes it easier for them to work in the U.S. Venezuelans make up such a large proportion of the people coming to the U.S. that changing their status has an outsized effect. In New York City, about 40% of the roughly 60,000 asylum seekers in the city is paying to house are from Venezuela. 60,000 asylum seekers? Last I heard, there was like 110, 120,000 people on the streets in New York. 60,000. Okay. The administration also vowed to speed up the time it takes for migrants who are already eligible to work to get their authorizations processed. A key demand from Democratic governors and mayors. Yes, please fast track all of these people to get them to work so they're not sitting out on the streets anymore. Fast track. Speed things up when it comes to authorizing people that came to the country illegally. More broadly, the administration has relied on a carrot and stick approach over the last year to deal with immigration. How's that working out for you? How is that working out for you? That's involved doing things like giving humanitarian parole to people from certain countries, provided they have a financial sponsor and fly into the country, and then relying heavily on consequences for those who don't follow the rules. For example, they have beefed up deportations and expulsions. And if there's no downside to trying to get into the country illegally again, then that doesn't mean anything, does it? Republicans say it's not enough and accuse the administration of doing little to control the southern border. Well, the proof is in the proverbial pudding here. Who is coming, and does that affect resources? I mean, PBS or AP, whoever this is, asking the real tough questions. Julia Gillette of the Migration Policy Institute said there are key differences between what's going on now and during past immigration surges. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, there were more single adults coming to the U.S. Now, families with children are increasingly arriving, and they have different needs. While a single adult traveling by himself may be okay crashing on a friend's couch, families often expect more for their children and may be more likely to need government services to protect them. Kids need to go to school. Also, communications have advanced. These days, migrants can easily share information on social media about the best places to go and what services are available. Yes, please Google, what are the list of sanctuary cities close to the border? That's easy. Gillette noted that many of the migrants crossing the border don't hide from the government. Why not? Some have been granted humanitarian parole or have a notice to appear in immigration court. They may feel more empowered to ask for assistance. Yes, because there's no downside to breaking the law. On average, there is no downside now to coming across the border illegally. The only thing you risk is life and limb on the journey there, which is bad enough. But yeah, humanitarian parole, free jobs, fast-tracking work permits, on and on. Where are migrants staying? One of the challenges that has thrust immigration into the spotlight is housing. As it was in years previous, but okay. New York City and Massachusetts have right to shelter rules, meaning they must provide housing to people who need it with certain restrictions. In addition to the roughly 60,000 migrants New York is housing, 60,000 New York is housing. Okay, well, that doesn't count the people on the streets. Okay. Massachusetts is also paying to shelter about 11,000 new arrivals. Murad Awade, I'm mispronouncing that certainly, who heads the New York Immigration Coalition that advocates for immigrants' rights, said immigrants arriving in the city previously didn't really use the city-run shelter system. They had friends or relatives to help them find places to stay, but that's changing. Yeah, when you say you're going to offer free jobs to any Venezuelan who can get up there and lie their way into saying, I was here before July 31st. Quote, the most unique thing about this situation is simply that folks don't have a family connection here or community connections like they have had historically, Awade said. Decades ago, migrants arriving in the U.S. were almost all Mexican nationals. Experts and officials note that migrants today arrive from a vast array of countries across South and Central America and Africa, as well as from China and India. Their disparate countries of origin complicate deportations because they have to be flown. In some cases, migrants can't be deported because the U.S. has no agreement with their native countries, notably Venezuela. Oh, that's why. That's why. That's why we're giving special treatment to Venezuela. We can't send them back. Oh, jeez. So, oh, man. Well, finally we get an answer. It only took, 2 or 3 articles? Finally we get an answer. Holy cats. What's the impact of migrants being bused from the border? In 2022, Texas began busing migrants to Democrat-led cities around the country to challenge the Biden administration's border policies, and they were right to do so. Arizona has also bused migrants out of state. Oh, Arizona did too, huh? The numbers are relatively small compared to the overall migrant flow. For example, since the spring of 2022, New York says it has counted 113,000 newly arrived migrants compared to the 8,200 Texas said it bused there. Yeah, you know why? Because of sanctuary city policies being put to the test by those states and counties and cities that have had to deal with it themselves, while everybody else up north has talked about how righteous they are. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sending 8,200 from Texas to New York might have been a small number, but it sent a signal, right? It was a test. Let's see what New York does with this. Let's see what their messaging is. Let's see what their rhetoric is once they have to deal with a little bit of what the border cities have had to deal with. And their reaction? In the beginning, oh, we're open to everybody. No, we're not going to work with the federal government. ICE, you have no place here. On and on and on. That's why the numbers swelled. The message was sent out. New York really does act as a sanctuary city. And now, only now, is Eric Adams and Hochul seeing the error of their ways. But the Migration Policy Institute wrote last year that the Republican-sponsored trips had repercussions far beyond the numbers. After crossing the southern border, migrants used to spread, quote, organically, quietly, and gradually across the U.S., the Institute wrote. Quote, the buses have instead brought migrants to these cities in an orchestrated, visible, and deliberately disorderly way. In generating this chaos, the busing scheme has succeeded, at least, in showcasing the challenges at the border, unquote, the organization wrote. That was the point. That was the point. Yes. The problems the border states and cities have been dealing with for years, now it becomes the problem of the people who stand in such high, virtuous, moral rectitude. It challenges the whole system. It says, hey, maybe we need to change the way we do things now that we've made it your problem, New York. And we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I've got a story out of New York. Don't worry. How long have I gone now? Just about an hour. Okay, not too bad. I'm making pretty good time for the articles that I've got. All right, so that was September 21st. Explaining to us the influx of migrants crossing the U.S. southern border. And finally, we got an answer as to why Venezuelans are a protected class. But speaking of Venezuelans, Venezuelan migrants are repelled by reinstalled razor wire at Eagle Pass as mayor blames Biden and says robberies and violence in chaotic city have increased amid deluge of 11,500 migrants as officials brace for 9,000 more. There's a lot to unpack in this story. A lot has happened in the last couple of days. This is from September 22nd, so just 2 days ago. Some bullet points. Razor wire installed by the Texas National Guard along the banks of the Rio Grande and Eagle Pass was keeping migrants away on Thursday for a while. Soon, the migrants were crawling under the wire, unfazed by the CNN crew. Stop playing videos. Standing and watching them live on air. The mayor of Eagle Pass said that Joe Biden bore some of the blame for the crisis. The local sheriff said Biden had sent the message, the border is open. A group of Venezuelan migrants were repelled from reaching a small Texan border town after border agents reinstalled razor wire as the local mayor blamed President Biden for the crisis that has seen thousands of migrants make it through. Border agents have been left scrambling after 9,000 migrants and counting crossed the Rio Grande River from Mexico to reach the town of Eagle Pass on Friday. Rolando Salinas, the mayor of Eagle Pass, blasted Biden for the influx of migrants on Thursday that has seen, quote, robberies and violence, unquote, skyrocket in the usually quiet town after 11,500 migrants flocked to his town in the last 10 days. That's 1,000 new people to this tiny little town every day, practically, plus for the last 10 days. But for one group of Venezuelan migrants, their attempt to reach the town, home to 29,000 permanent residents, was blocked by reinstalled razor wire. Again, let's just focus in on that word, reinstalled. Where did it go the first time? Video shows the group of men stranded on the U.S. side of the Rio Grande River after they were unable to cut through the wire. However, they told another group of migrants attempting to cross to go back and cross in another area they thought would have weaker reinforcements. The unfolding response in Eagle Pass, where Salinas declared a state of emergency, illustrates how Border Patrol agents have become overwhelmed in recent days by asylum seekers on parts of the U.S. border with Mexico. My words exceed my brain on this one. Pardon me. After a dip in illegal crossings that followed new asylum restrictions in May, which again was basically people just waiting to see what would happen, Biden's administration is again on its heels. Quote, there have to be consequences for crossing illegally, Salinas told the New York Post on Thursday. Salinas, a lifelong resident of his town, stopped playing. I don't want to watch any of the video. Stop. I can't even stop it. Okay. Let's try this again. There have to be consequences for crossing illegally, Salinas told the New York Post on Thursday. Salinas, a lifelong resident of his town, said it was unprecedented. Quote, I've never seen people cross like this. If they're going to come, they must enter through the port of entry. I know people are desperate, but this is a nation of laws. Our cops are overwhelmed. Our firefighters are responding to calls for care for migrants. We don't have the resources to handle this. We've seen robberies. They've broken into homes. And just scrolling through some of the pictures I don't mind so much. Yeah, being dragged. Look at this. Okay, a child, a toddler is being dragged through razor wire. Razor wire. Look at this. Sorry, I one of the rules, one of the instinctive rules I've gained over the years of doing this is not to allow dead air to take place. As much as possible, fill up the space with voice, even through an awkward pause or otherwise. But I take a look at photos like this. Babies being dragged through razor wire. It just... I apologize. The words leave me as I see pictures like this. The mayor was asked by CNN's Aaron Burnett whether he thought President Joe Biden was to blame for the crisis in his town. Quote, I'll be honest with you. I believe 100% he does bear some responsibility for the crisis, he said. Quote, I haven't heard from anybody in the administration. The president hasn't put out a statement. The vice president. I haven't heard from anybody. Nobody has bothered to call me or the city staff and say, hey, this is the federal government. We know what you're going through. We're worried about you. This is our plan of action. Nothing. We're here abandoned. We're on the border. We're asking for help. This is unacceptable, unquote. He said the United States was a, quote, nation of laws, unquote. Well, sorry, Mayor of Eagle Pass. We have to send billions and billions and billions of dollars to the Ukraine. Eagle Pass, Hawaii? No, 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 no. Our own states, our own citizens? No, 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 no. Billions of dollars, materiel, personnel, and everything else has to go to Ukraine. Ukraine is the important part. Not our own country, not our own borders. No, 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 no. What are you thinking? Salinas asked that those wanting to come to the country should respect the laws, saying it was unfair on those who did. A simple statement of truth. On Wednesday night, Biden sent an additional 800 active duty troops to the border to work alongside 2,500 members of the National Guard who are already there. Yeah, doing office work. They are not there to do anything about contacts with illegal immigrants. They are there to do office work and logistics, back office stuff. They are not allowed to engage with the migrants. A game of cat and mouse was playing out on Thursday along the banks of the Rio Grande. Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, on Wednesday tweeted that he had sent members of the Texas National Guard to reinstall razor wire along the riverbank after it had been removed. On Thursday, a News Nation reporter tweeted footage of migrants sitting on the banks of the Rio Grande, unable to scramble up the embankment to the U.S. side. A thick roll of razor wire blocked their passage. Quote, "We are refusing to let them in and sending them back," he wrote on X. X. Yep, here's the Texas National Guard reinstalling razor wire. Who took out the razor wire again? Was it just the migrants? Let's keep going. But just down the road, CNN reporter Ed Lavandera was speaking live on air when the migrants decided to take matters into their own hands and scramble under the wires. Some lifted the wire, allowing their fellow migrants to crawl under. Others behind them threw backpacks and duffel bags across the wire. They were totally unfazed by the presence of a TV crew filming the entering illegally. Filming the entering illegally? Maybe filming them? Anyway. A Border Patrol agent soon appeared, and the group prepared to hand themselves in. The reasons for the sudden surge at Eagles Pass are unknown. Unknown, you say? New York's given out free jobs to Venezuelans. Lavandera said that the ending of Title 42 in May stopped the crossings for several months. No, it didn't stop the crossings. It reduced the crossings. Reduced. There was no stopping. There was a brief reduction. Several months? I don't know. From the end of May to July, is that several months? What are you talking about? Stopped the crossings. Under the new rules which replaced Title 42, anyone found crossing illegally will be deported and blocked from entering for 5 years, with criminal prosecution if they are found. Yeah, if. Just keep rolling the dice. How many? Okay. Of the people crossing the border in the last week, how many of those people do you think this is not their first rodeo in crossing the border? How many? I wonder what the percentage is. I bet it's greater than 1%. I'll be conservative and say I think it's greater than 1%. But after a lull, of a whole month, dude, come on. The migrants waiting in Mexico to cross grew frustrated and are now surging over. On Thursday afternoon, migrants lined up to sign waivers to get a seat on one of the buses chartered by Abbott to allow the migrants to travel to New York City. More than 115,000 migrants have arrived in New York City in the past year. Boy, oh boy. Oh, here's the City of Eagle Pass issues emergency declaration. Today, Mayor Rolando Salinas Jr. issued and signed an emergency declaration due to the severe undocumented immigrant surge into the city of Eagle Pass, Texas. Therefore, a local state of disaster has been declared. Yeah, disaster. The state of disaster shall continue for a period of 7 days. I'm sure that's only the initial from the date of this declaration, unless renewed by the city council of the city of Eagle Pass, Texas. It will be. It will be. Look at this. And I apologize for those of you who are listening in the car or something, you can't see the images, but just imagine just absolute bedlam. Just tons and tons of people Women, children, families all lined up, marching across the border, sitting in rows, waiting to be processed. Then you have people who are riding coal trains and things to get to the border, hanging off of train. Oh, man. Tom Schirmer, the sheriff of Maverick County, told CNN that the surge in crossings was extremely dangerous. Yeah, you don't say. The body of a man believed to be a migrant was found in the waters around Eagle Pass on Thursday morning. On Wednesday, a 3-year-old boy died after being swept away as his family attempted to cross the Rio Grande near Eagle Pass. Quote, "It's something very strange. Never thought I was going to see something like that in Eagle Pass," says Schirmer, an Eagle Pass native. Schirmer, a Democrat, said that migrants caught crossing should be immediately sent back over the border and said Biden was sending the message that the border is, quote, "going to be open," unquote. Quote, "Some people are drowning, some people are dying," Schirmer said. Quote, some of those ranchers are finding bodies or bones, so why take a risk? Why make those people come like this? Because they have no answers and they are weak. They are too weak to be pragmatic about the realities of the world and want to be seen as the good guys. The good guys, not the Trump guys, not the xenophobes. No, we're a nation of immigrants, right? We're a nation of immigrants. We're not some kind of xenophobic, racist, whatever the heck Trump is. No. We have to stand on the principles of giving false and dangerous and deadly hope to desperate people worldwide, and especially from countries that we have no extradition treaty with or deportation treaty with. We got to get those votes. Got to get those votes. This might be, after reading this article, this next one might be somewhat repetitive, but I'm going to read it anyway, just to underline the point, because why not? At this point, why not? 3-year-old boy found dead in Rio Grande renews anger over U.S.-Mexico border crossings. This is from USA Today on, again, September 22nd. The bodies of 2 people, including a 3-year-old child, were recovered from the Rio Grande along the Texas-Mexico border this week as the state comes under fire for dangerous barriers erected in the international waterway to deter migrant crossing. This has nothing to do with the buoys. Are you kidding me? For those of you that don't know, Texas, Governor Greg Abbott, etc., installed a buoy barrier around Eagles Pass at the Rio Grande last month, or within the last couple of months. And it's been called some kind of dangerous, some kind of inhumane, some kind of destructive installment. It was meant to deter people from trying to cross the Rio Grande and drowning or becoming injured at best. And yet here we are. It's the buoy barrier, guys. Deaths along the state's border with Mexico have become a recurrent tragedy, including several young children as they attempt to cross the border or during transport by U.S. officials. On Wednesday, Texas officials found the body of 3-year-old boy, in the Rio Grande near the border town of Eagle Pass after receiving reports of a child being, quote, swept away by currents. Oh, so it had nothing to do with the barrier, did it? The Texas Department of Public Safety told CBS News the boy, who officials say were traveling with family, was pronounced dead at a local hospital. Another body was found the following day in the same river. Both were discovered north of the buoys installed in July as part of Texas Governor Greg Abbott's controversial border control. Oh, so were they there because of the buoy, or did they just flow down from elsewhere? Quote, another senseless tragedy due to the federal government's absence in discouraging unlawful border crossings between the ports of entry and lack of implementing preventative measures, unquote, Texas Department of Public Safety spokesperson Chris Olivares said regarding the toddlers drowning on X, formerly Twitter. Quote, Texas will continue to enhance border security and deterrent measures with boots on the ground, infrastructure, and enforcing state law. The Texas agency did not immediately provide comment Friday evening. Well, if you're going to classify what happened to these people drowning in the Rio Grande as the fault of a buoy barrier, USA Today, I can't imagine why they wouldn't want to talk to you. No, go back. Dang, I want to get rid of the ad. Wait, that's not the ad, that's the story? Clicking on this closes the story. What? Okay. Dangerous barriers installed. Unlawful crossings on the rise. The buoy barrier is designed as a total blockade, as it is fastened to the river bottom with nets below the water to prevent people from swimming underneath them, and the orange balls rotate so people can't climb over. Critics have said the buoys make dangerous crossings even more unsafe. How? In August, 2 bodies were recovered from the Rio Grande, one of which was found stuck on the buoys. Yeah, did the body get stuck on the buoys or did it flow down from further up the river? You're leaving out the part where they believe the body flowed from upward of the river down to the buoys and got caught on the net. Okay, I'm not reading USA Today anymore. I do not trust USA Today. As could easily be said about other major news outlets, but in this instance, on this article, I'm not reading any further. They are leaving out so much. All right, let's take a moment and talk about New York City, shall we? Let's take a moment and talk about New York City. Also, a couple more hellos while I'm thinking about it real quick. Datura Jones, good morning. Check Your Logic, good morning. Anybody else I missed in the meantime? Bookworm Addict, good morning. John Trioxin, good morning. And Apex Algorithm Guy, good morning. This is Kyle, good morning. And Bash the Doggy, good morning. Those Ain't Real Dude, good morning. Again, if I missed you, if you're lurking, if you're in the future, good morning. New York City shelters set to dump thousands of migrants to discourage new arrivals. Oh yeah, that's going to work. The move by Adams marks a critical new moment in the year-long immigration crisis in New York. Oh, well, yeah. New York, the migrant crisis is getting so hard for New York City to handle that Mayor Eric Adams sees a policy that could send thousands of people into the streets, many with nowhere to sleep and nowhere to work, as his best move. So you're going to drop thousands of unsheltered, desperate people who have not been fully vetted for their presence in the country, undocumented, into the streets of New York. What could possibly go wrong? You're going to discourage further influx. It's the latest in a series of increasingly desperate attempts by the Democratic mayor to stem the influx of asylum seekers, a situation some in City Hall think has been fueled in part by a decades-old mandate for the city to provide shelter to anyone in need and for as long as they need it. How's that working out for you? With more than 60,000 migrants in the city's care, Adams has decided to stop sheltering single adults after 2 months, and thousands will start being evicted this Saturday. That was yesterday, everyone. The decision was made in part out of concerns that New York's shelter guarantee was becoming a magnet for migrants, according to 2 people familiar with City Hall's thinking. Well, you don't. Also, Sanctuary City, also pointedly and publicly declaring they will not work with ICE and federal officials back when Eric Adams took over. Aside from all that, yeah. Quote, the sense is that people didn't fully understand just how accommodating New York City was to migrants until now from a lot of these areas. And now it's a big reason that people are coming here, unquote, said one of the people who is granted anonymity to speak candidly. Why? 2 people familiar with City Hall's thinking? Like that could be some like tarot card reader down the street. What are you talking about? Oh my God. Quote, but if the understanding is you're not guaranteed a place to stay, that affects the flow. Yeah, well, too late. Too late. Free jobs for Venezuelans. Free jobs for Venezuelans. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who has been at odds with the mayor over how to respond to the situation, is also echoing that concern. Oh, is she now? What was she saying not too long ago? Let's see if they talk about that contrast. Thank you. This is Kyle. Even if the buoys caused it, if you put a wrought iron fence around your yard with points at the top and someone impales themselves on trying to break into your house, who is at fault? Yes, that is also true. You can't cure stupid. Except when it comes to a 3-year-old child. That's not the kid's fault. And I'm not criticizing you, Kyle. I'm just pissed off about the 3-year-old kid losing his life because his idiot family were stupid enough to put him at risk. Barrier or not, you don't need a barrier to drown in the Rio Grande. Sorry, I none of that is directed at you, Kyle. I apologize. It's just I keep thinking about this. Sorry. That just really, 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 really pisses me off. Whole thing. Your point is well taken, and that stupidity is at the hands of the family that put that kid at risk. And anybody else who decides to throw themselves into a meat grinder like the Rio Grande or 17 or 30-foot walls and on and on and on. All of this wasted life. You know, even someone stupid and desperate, they're still a human being. And they're throwing it away. For what? And whose fault is it? Well, it's theirs for putting their life into it, but who drew them there? Who baited them? Who tempted them with free stuff over and over again for years? Who stood on stages raising their hands that they open up the borders? Free jobs, free housing, sanctuary cities. We won't work with the federal government, guys, we promise, because we're so good. We have halos around our heads, everybody. We're not Trump. Yeah. Not being Trump. I wonder how many deaths that has led to at this point. The virtue of not being Trump. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, who has been at odds with the mayor over how to respond to the situation, is also echoing that concern. Quote, never was it envisioned that this would be an unlimited universal right or obligation on the city to have to house literally the entire world, unquote. Hochul told reporters on Wednesday, quote, we want to make sure that no families end up on the streets. We don't want anything to happen to our children, but we also have to let the world know that there have to be limits to this. Hold on. I don't know if Politico is going to bring it up, but I want to find out. Okay. All right, I'm gonna grab this article for the next one. I'm adding an article to the because apparently only the first one that came across, only the Daily Mail is willing to put up the comparison of Hochul's previous comments. I mean, maybe Politico will do it as well. We'll see. Okay, the move by Adams marks a critical new moment in the year-long immigration crisis in New York, where the arrival of more than 100,000 migrants since spring of 2022 has stretched the shelters beyond their capacity and forced the city to house people in tents. Now, with many about to face the end of their stays, migrants will be thrust into one of the most expensive places in the world. Okay, that's an interesting way to put it. What they'll find is a city of extremes, where even the middle class can struggle to make ends meet, where the median rent is a record $4,400 a month in Manhattan, where scarce apartments can prompt fierce bidding wars, and where billionaires spend tens, even hundreds of millions of dollars on glitzy second homes high atop the skyline. Housing and immigrant advocates say many of the migrants evicted from shelters will have no choice but to sleep on the street. Quote, directives like this that are not fully thought out and entirely short-sighted, you don't say, will have really dangerous, harmful repercussions, including street homelessness, said Councilmember Shahana Hanif, chair of the body's immigration committee. Yeah, you know what also was not fully thought out and entirely short-sighted? New York's immigration policy up to this point. New York's sanctuary city status and declarations up to this point. The rhetoric from the politicians of New York up to this point. I wonder what our council members' rhetoric on New York's policies has been up to this point, and whether or not that might have been not fully thought out and entirely short-sighted. Just wondering. The problem illustrates the intersection of two of the most pressing crises facing New York: the flood of migrants that has strained the city's budget and social services, and a decades-in-the-making housing shortage that has driven up the cost of living to stunning new heights. New York has, for centuries, been a haven for immigrants. Is my phone ringing? Sorry, I heard a sound in the background. I thought something was going on. Okay. New York has for centuries been a haven for immigrants fleeing persecution, political instability, and economic hardship. Critics say the 60-day shelter limit flies in the face of that ethos and violates the long-time mandate that the city provide a bed to anyone in need, which dates back to 1981. The city has handed out more than 10,800 60-day notices so far. Meanwhile, the administration wrote to a judge in May, seeking to suspend the right to shelter amid the migrant influx. Those discussions are ongoing in court. What happens if the judge says, nope, you can't turn that back? What do you do then? Quote, the simple fact is the right to shelter is what prevents New York City and the entire surrounding region from seeing the mass tent encampments now common in many other American cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Sorry, how has New York City been housing many of the people? In tents. There's no space left. The simple fact is the right to shelter. Okay, so the right to shelter has prevented bad optics. That's your concern? The right to shelter has prevented bad optics. Yes, you're correct. And that's all about to change, even more so. And the surrounding region from seeing mass tent encampments now common in many other American cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco. The Legal Aid Society and the Coalition for the Homeless, advocacy groups who serve in a watchdog role over the shelter mandate, said in a statement Thursday. Thanks a lot, Legal Aid Society and Coalition for the Homeless. You said a thing that was true. But pushing people out of shelters, potentially creating images of hundreds or even thousands of people sleeping outdoors, might help emphasize a point Adams has repeated for months. The city's capacity for new arrivals is already far past its breaking point and requires more state and federal help. So wait a second. Are you saying that a city official, a government official, is moving people out of concealment and into public view to underscore the point that a problem exists and something needs to be done? Okay, tell me again about your complaints about having people bust from Texas into your town. It's the same mechanism, is it not? Well, glad you're on the team again. Well, for the first time, I should say, Eric Adams. Boy, oh boy. Adams has pleaded for more help from President Joe Biden and Hochul after you turned it away back in 2021, criticizing both publicly in a departure from his previously close relationship with the fellow Democrats. Some help came late Wednesday. The Biden administration agreed to extend temporary protection status to migrants from Venezuela because you have nothing else you can do with them. It's amazing how many articles don't mention that fact. It really is amazing. Why don't you guys explain? Most of these places do not explain or even give any indication as to why Venezuela, of all places, is so special. But anyway, Adams said Thursday it would affect less than 10,000 out of the roughly 60,000 migrants in the city's care. There are hundreds more arriving each day, officials say. Quote, we cannot continue to be left nearly entirely alone to solve a national crisis that the state and federal governments have refused to take meaningful action on. City Hall spokesperson Kayla Mamelik said in a statement, noting the administration has opened 200 emergency shelters and spent more than $2 billion on the crisis to date. You guys told Mayorkas no. This is the one instance where I'll give the Biden administration a little bit of credit. They approached you guys in 2021 saying, hey, we're the new administration, we're not Trump, but we really need you to work with us and help us with the migration problem and work alongside ICE to do so. And you guys said no. You stood on your virtue. You stood on your, we're for migrants and we're against Trump. Refuse to take meaningful action. Well, again, I'm not going to praise the administration for the actions they have taken in those places where they have taken it, but they came to you guys asking to work with them and you said no. So come on. Late Friday, Adams announced he would further restrict shelter stays for new arrivals to just 30 days. Additionally, if migrants who have hit the 60-day mark are unable to find other accommodations and return to the intake center, they will face a 30-day limit on their new shelter placements, paired with intensified casework services, his office said in a statement. Sounds like a circular... And who's going to be effectively tracking who is here the first time, second time, or otherwise? Can you imagine the bureaucracy? Can you imagine the overwhelmed nature of the people having to do this? Can you imagine the problems? Oh, my God. Good gravy. Okay. Families with children are exempt from the policy, though the city has considered expanding it to that population, one person with knowledge of the discussion said. And so you're encouraging more people to bring children with them, to act as families, to pose as families, or even if they are families. And how many more 3-year-olds are going to die in the Rio Grande, for God's sakes? Adams has sought to limit the number of people coming to New York in more explicit ways. The city earlier this year printed flyers to hand out at the southern border, discouraging migrants from coming to New York, citing, in part, the high cost of living. Oh, you mean the high cost of living in a city that has a statute that said anybody who needs a house will get it? Who cares about the high cost of living when you guys are giving out free housing? By city mandate since 1981 that still is being challenged in the courts. Also, free jobs to Venezuelans. Quote, let me be clear, we do not want anyone sleeping on our streets, unquote, Zachary Iskell, Adams' emergency management commissioner, said at a city council hearing last month. Quote, we should not underestimate the abilities, the resourcefulness, the agency of the people in our care, unquote. You're right. If you guys aren't giving them the stuff that they need, simply by the nature of personal survival, they will find ways to try to acquire it themselves. Quote, a lot of them, I think, given 60 days, will find another place. Yeah, right. They will be able to get out on their own feet, unquote. Oh, you think? Boy, I admire Zachary Iskell's optimism. Absolutely delusional optimism. If migrants can't find housing before the 60 days are up, they can reapply for a slot in shelter, city officials said. Then what is the downside? Except they're still going to be out on the street because you're already overwhelmed and more people are coming every day. It's not going to get better. You're going to have this cyclical, reciprocal population of people out on the street, into shelters, out on the street, in shelters. And in the meantime that they don't have an actual shelter, what are they going to do? Where are they going to go? How are they going to try to acquire it? A mayoral spokesperson said the city is hoping it will be able to accommodate anyone who needs a new bed, but noted the shelter system is already past its limit. Then what are you saying? One official, give us names. Give us the people responsible for this. Come on. One official said last month getting a new bed would be, quote, based on our ability to provide at that point. You can't. You already cannot. You are past your limit, and more people are coming. The spokesperson said that out of the 113,300 migrants who have come to the city since spring of 2022, about 53,000 have moved out of the city's care. Yeah, where? Where did they go? To the suburbs and the outlying cities? Are they handling them any better? Most migrants currently lack work authorization. And while many come with plans to formally seek asylum, there's a shortage of immigration lawyers to help people through the complex and lengthy application process. That has meant some of them have missed key deadlines in the process that could limit their legal options and leave them undocumented. It's almost like our immigration system is completely, totally broken and overwhelmed and has been for a long time. If only there were people out there in charge of such things that could fix this. If only there were people out there who could sit down, be brought to the table under a state of emergency, and hammer out new laws, restrictions, and regulations to try to mitigate this. Oh well. At least anecdotally, migrants seem to be finding at least some work under the table. Oh, I'm not surprised, but for many, it's not enough to survive on their own, particularly in New York City, where rents have skyrocketed since the COVID-19 pandemic. A survey of 766 asylum seekers by Make the Road, an immigration advocacy group, released in June found 97% were living in shelters, and 93% of those in shelters had not been able to move out because they did not have enough income. Quote, it's been extremely, extremely difficult trying to find a job. Your Maris, 34, a migrant from Venezuela, who didn't want to give her last name, said through an interpreter, well, hey, your Maris, you got nothing to worry about. You're going to have free work permit coming your way. You are from the magical country of Venezuela. She's living at the Roosevelt Hotel with her husband and 8-year-old daughter. A dentist back home, she hasn't yet gotten permission to work in the U.S. and said while she is thankful she has a shelter placement, she feels stuck. For the most part, the migrants don't qualify for city-funded housing vouchers or federal programs like public housing or Section 8, another housing subsidy. Advocates working closely with asylum seekers say, unlike past waves of immigration, many newcomers don't have the sort of community or support network that could help them get on their feet. Yeah, they're not coming there because they have family. They're coming there because Texas is busing them there. New York has an open housing policy. New York has made declarations for years now about being a sanctuary city. Yeah. It doesn't matter if they don't have support. Supposedly, New York will take care of you, has been the message going out for years. Quote, a lot of folks have no family or friends here that they can link up with, said Theodore Moore, vice president of policy at the New York Immigration Coalition. Boy, there are a lot of immigration coalitions and groups and things. Quote, they're coming here strictly because they're trying to find a better life for their families, unquote. Well, I hate to tell them this. That is not a right under law, or I should say a circumstance under law that will grant you asylum. You're not fleeing a natural disaster. You're not fleeing war. You're here for an economic benefit. That is an uphill battle to qualify for asylum ultimately. But of course, qualifying for asylum is kind of a non-issue now because it's going to take years, even if your application does get processed, and you'll be staying in the country the entire time anyway, because they can't kick you out because you're from particular countries or because they've already made statements of moral rectitude. Yeah. The strain on the system due to the migrant influx has led the city and state to set up tent cities on unused government land all across the 5 boroughs to keep up with the rush of new arrivals. I thought that the sheltering policy was supposed to stop that from happening. Meanwhile, the citywide apartment vacancy rate for units below $1,500, was a mere 1%, according to the most recent New York City Housing and Vacancy Survey. $1,500 rent in New York City. Holy cats. Can you imagine? Call it a perfect storm of troubles for the city. Oh, yes, it is all these outside forces that are it's just fate. It's just an accident. It's through no fault of their own. Quote, it's kind of a worst case scenario for someone arriving and on top of an already record shelter population, unquote, said Howard Slatkin, executive director of the Citizens Housing and Planning Council, a research and advocacy group. Boy, oh boy, there are so many housing and immigration groups. Where do they get their money from? There were already about 45,000 New Yorkers in homeless shelters before the migrant crisis began. There are now more than 100,000. No, hold on. Wait. You mean, when you say New Yorkers, do you mean like citizens? Like homeless citizens? Or is anybody who walks across the border now a New Yorker? One shelter provider who was granted anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly. Okay, well, why? Why are they not allowed to speak publicly? Okay, said about 150 migrant families in their facilities. Said of about 150 migrant families in their facilities, just 20 have successfully exited the shelters, and half of them simply left the state. When they say people are like, leaving and graduating from this, they're going somewhere. Some advocates have pushed to expand city housing vouchers to people regardless of documentation status, arguing such a move would end up saving the city money on emergency shelter costs. Yeah, let's just house people that have absolutely no documentation, no vetting. We don't know who they are. We don't know why they're here. We don't know what their situation was in their home country. That's just, I see no problems. But the mayor's office noted that as of this summer, there were still 20,000 families with vouchers who have been unable to find housing. 20,000 families. So at the very minimum, you're talking what? If you say like a single parent, so two people, at least two people, we'll say. Okay, so 20,000 families, at minimum 40,000 people. And that's the bare minimum. That's if you got nothing but one parent families of one kid. The city is so vexed. Adams has moved hundreds of migrants to the suburbs and upstate, creating a separate firestorm in local communities. Yeah, look, the numbers in New York City are decreasing, guys, because I'm moving them to other places. Also, the governor of Texas is a jerk for moving people here, but okay. Still, Moore at the Immigrant Coalition said he's seen success stories of migrants leaving shelters and noted most people are remaining in the city. Okay, leaving shelter does not mean... Okay. He also noted that the high cost of living has never stopped people from wanting to live in the melting pot. Okay, this Moore guy is just... Quote, New York has been an expensive city for its entire existence. That does not deter people from wanting to be here, Moore said. Well, I didn't think it was going to be rental prices that were going to keep people out of New York. Okay, well, since Politico did not go into it more specifically, let's go back to the Daily Mail to get ourselves a little information on the governor of New York's shifting views on immigration. I've only got 2 articles left, guys, and then I'm going to wrap up because my voice is leaving me, if you couldn't tell. From the Daily Mail on September 21st, New York Governor Kathy Hochul's migrant U-turn. Video reveals how Democrat welcomed asylum seekers, quote, with open arms in 2021. But today she tells them, quote, go somewhere else. Oh, man. New York Governor Kathy Hochul welcomed asylum seekers with open arms and pledged to house them just 3 years before telling migrants to go elsewhere because the city is at its limit. The Democrat addressed the migrant crisis on Wednesday, warning that asylum seekers who arrive in New York can I pause this stupid thing? Who arrive in New York will not be housed in hotel rooms as they have been in the past. Quote, we have to get the word out that when you come to New York, you're not going to have more hotel rooms. We don't have capacity, Hochul said on CNN. Quote, so we have to also message properly that we're at a limit. If you're going to leave your country, go somewhere else, unquote. It's a stunning reversal from her statements in December 2021 when she promised to house and protect asylum seekers before thousands of migrants began arriving every month from southern border states. More than 113,000 migrants have arrived in the city since last spring. Quote, as you know, the Statue of Liberty is inscribed. It says, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. You're welcome with open arms, and we'll work to keep you safe. We'll not only house you, but we'll protect you, unquote. Surprise, surprise, surprise. The city has a legal obligation to give shelter to those who make their way there, and Mayor Eric Adams has desperately turned to a variety of city landmarks such as hotels, makeshift shelters, and temporary housing as short-term solutions. New York officials have been sounding the alarm for months over their inability to right the ship, with Adams cautioning that his office estimates the issue will cost the city in the region of $12 billion in just 3 years. Adams has also had a change of heart regarding how welcoming New York should be to migrants. Last August, remember August of 2022, Adams went to Port Authority to welcome a bus full of asylum seekers sent from Texas by Republican Governor Greg Abbott, who argued progressive cities should also bear the costs of the influx of asylum seekers crossing the southern border. Speaking to reporters at the time, the mayor said, quote, "As the mayor of New York, I have to provide services families that are here." I'll assume that's a direct quote. "As the mayor of New York, I have to provide services families that are here, and that's what we're going to do. Our responsibility as a city, and I'm proud that this is a right to shelter state, and we're going to continue to do that." Unquote. But the buses kept coming. And a year later, Adams is pleading for federal and state aid, asking a judge to suspend the right to shelter policy as the city struggles to find room for the 110,000 asylum seekers that have arrived since the spring of 2022. Okay. And I figure we're going to start repeating stuff that we've already talked about a couple of times. Last article. And this comes from just yesterday. From CNN. Oh, our favorite CNN. Chris Cillizza's no longer there. He was fired. Our favorite friend at CNN. I wish I could read articles from Chris Cillizza from CNN still, but I can't. Last article, everyone. September 23rd. Latest wave of migrants at U.S.-Mexico border puts Biden under renewed pressure. He won't care. Won't care. He's got more important things to do, like Ukraine and worry about Hunter. A new surge of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border has placed immense pressure on federal resources and tested President Joe Biden's border policies only months after going into place. Yeah, and they worked so good. Prompting fresh criticism from Republicans and concern within the administration over a politically delicate issue. Politically delicate issue. You have to walk around on eggshells about this, guys. Don't say the border around the boss. Biden has been plagued by issues on the border since his first months in office, when the U.S. faced a surge of unaccompanied migrant children that caught officials flat-footed. Why? How many times can I say it? And CNN, I know. I don't know why I should be shocked or surprised. CNN, can you think for a second as to why there was an influx around the time that Biden took over? Can you think of any debates, statements, rhetoric, arguments against policy, arguments against laws that took place from Biden and the other Democrats and all of these other cities during the year or two prior to Biden taking office? Can you think of anything that might have given people encouragement about bringing children to the border or coming to the border in general? Oh, just surprised. We caught flat-footed. The fact that they were caught flat-footed tells you a lot about just how short-sighted and ill thought out their rhetoric and their declarations were prior to taking office. Caught officials flat-footed. Over the last 2 years, his administration has continued to face fierce pushback from Republicans and at times Democrats over his immigration policies. Yeah. Tell us about the Democrats in 2021. That complicated political landscape was put into sharp focus this week when administration officials were forced to contend with images. It's all about the window dressing, guys. It's all about the optics. Now that the images are out there, we got a problem. We're forced to contend with images of migrants crossing into the U.S. in large groups, while also heralding a major move that will make hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans already in the U.S. eligible to work, addressing a major sticking point with allies in New York. Will even CNN not tell us why Venezuelans are getting special treatment? Let's see. But the new wave of newcomers, many of whom are from Venezuela, why do you think, paints a grim outlook for the fall as Biden ramps up his re-election campaign and Republicans continue to hammer the administration over its handling of the border. Well, Republicans, I got to tell you something. You guys are no angels here either. Okay? You didn't do anything to change the immigration system, policy or otherwise, while you were in power either. The only thing you did was get behind the wall. And then the rest of you guys just stayed behind and didn't change anything about the laws, the policies, or otherwise. You relied on Title 42. You leaned on Title 42 rather than taking action. It's no different than leaning on Roe v. Wade. It's no different than leaning on DACA. Some temporary, unofficial, non-law policy put into place to make up for what you guys are unwilling to do legislatively. Anyway, on Thursday, Biden blasted Republicans in Congress during remarks at the 46th Annual Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute's gala, in Washington, D.C., saying they, quote, continue to undermine our border security by blocking bipartisan efforts to pass immigration reform. Like what? Specifically what? Tell me, CNN, tell me, what is being blocked by Republicans and why? And if it's bipartisan efforts, why is it being blocked? Just tell us what it is. I don't know. In all of the glut and the flotsam and the jetsam of the day grind of information coming at us every day about things and stuff everywhere, what policies, what laws are attempting to be passed that Republicans are blocking? And why are they blocking them? Just because you're trying to pass some kind of law doesn't mean it's a good one. Undermining our border security, what were you guys doing in making the declarations you did? And God, putting Kamala Harris at the forefront at the beginning. Come on. Begging the cities through Alejandro Mayorkas to work with the federal government back in 2021. Come on. Quote, we need our colleagues to act. For decades, immigration reform has been bipartisan in this country, he said. Has it? Really? Okay. So what were you saying again about what Trump was doing previously? Unfortunately, MAGA Republicans in Congress spent 4 years gutting the immigration system under my predecessor, he added. I'm sorry, what? Gutting the immigration system. How? Where? You have had the worst numbers in years. I mean, don't get me wrong, Title 42 was a Band-Aid, a temporary Band-Aid. But, okay. And how many stories did I do on my own channel of Trump actually deporting people who had had their asylum applications overturned for years, but Obama just didn't do it because he didn't want to up his numbers on deportation, even though he was deporting plenty of people. In the absence of immigration reform, you're not going to tell us what is currently being pushed and is not being allowed through because of Republican obstructionism? Okay. The administration has put in place a patchwork of policies to try to stem the flow of migrants journeying to the U.S. southern border amid unprecedented mass migration in the Western Hemisphere. And how's that been working out? Earlier this year, the administration rolled out new and additional avenues for migrants to enter the U.S. legally, like a mobile app to keep people from crossing unlawfully. How's that working out? Doesn't seem to be working. If you've got 1,450 appointments a day possible, and you've got 9,000 people entering Eagle Pass inside of a week. They have also stood up centers in the hemisphere to allow migrants to apply to come to the U.S. Yeah, you're talking about those remote border processing centers in, what was it? I think it was Colombia. Oh, I'm forgetting now all of a sudden. But yeah, at least three little pieces of the U.S. border set down in foreign countries to bring people to process themselves for asylum, putting them at risk of not only the people they're supposedly running away from, but also gathering at places where smugglers can take advantage of them. But desperation and disinformation from smugglers, where have they been getting the information? They don't need disinformation. They don't need it. They just need Kathy Hochul from 2021 on a video saying, "We will protect you." It's not disinformation. It's their own words. Disinformation from smugglers have prompted migrants to cross anyway. Homeland Security officials are monitoring the situation, and while they gave no clear explanation for what prompted the latest surge, they cited poor economies, authoritarian regimes, and the climate crisis. The climate crisis. It's everybody else's fault, guys. We got nothing to do with it. It's not our rhetoric, not our policies, not our declarations, not our politicians inviting people to come to their cities. That's not our fault. It's not the rhetoric of the Biden campaign leading up to the election. No. This week, U.S. Border Patrol apprehended more than 8,000 migrants daily, according to two Homeland Security officials. That's up from around 3,500 daily border arrests after the COVID-area border restriction known as Title 42 expired in May and triggered more severe consequences for people who crossed the border illegally. So, Title 42 expires, triggers more severe consequences, illegal crossings jump through the roof. Somehow it doesn't seem like anything. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? The Department of Homeland Security has ramped up capacity in border facilities to accommodate the growing number of migrants, as well as continued to conduct deportation flights of migrants deemed ineligible to stay in the United States, except for Venezuela, where we don't have an agreement to send them back. And since most of the migrants are coming from Venezuela right now, we can't do anything with them. I think literally we can't do anything with them. Where are we going to send them to? Mexico doesn't want them. Other countries don't want. Yeah, it's okay. U.S. officials are also coordinating with Mexico to try to drive down crossings. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, is set to travel to the border on Saturday, going to McAllen, Texas, for a meeting with President Xiomara Castro of Honduras. To do what? To do what is that going to do? Hello, President of Honduras. I'm the Secretary of Homeland Security. Hello, Secretary of Homeland Security. Nice to meet you. Yes. Goodbye. The Department for Defense, for its part, is sending 800 new active duty personnel to the U.S.-Mexico border, in addition to the 2,500 National Guard members already in place, to provide support to federal authorities. Yes, they are office workers. They're not doing anything to prevent people coming across the border. Why do you keep implying that's what's happening when it isn't? The number of people authorized to interact with immigrants coming across the border, legally or otherwise, is the same number it has been as it always has been. You're not talking about new people being added to Border Patrol. You're talking about supplementary people being added to the back office. And I got to wonder, if some National Guard guy is replacing or supplementing some regular secretary in Border Patrol, are they putting that secretary out on the line with the rest of the patrol agents? The arrival of migrants at the U.S. southern border also affects inner cities, where asylum seekers usually reside as they go through their immigration proceedings, expanding the scope of the issue for the Biden administration. The administration addressed a major concern among Democrats this week by making more than 472,000 Venezuelans already in the U.S. eligible for temporary protected status. How temporary is that? How long is that supposed to last? And then once it runs out, if it ever runs out, what do you do then? Temporary protected status, which provides deportation protections and allows them to work in the U.S. Democratic allies had urged the White House to speed up the ability for Venezuelans to obtain work authorization so they wouldn't have to rely on social services. Quote, as a result of this decision, immigrants will be temporarily allowed to work, fill needed jobs, and support their families while awaiting an asylum determination, which could last for years upon years upon years. And even if their asylum determination is found to be invalid or lacking, what are you going to do with a Venezuelan when the country will not accept them back? Don't know. Doesn't say. The decision will also substantially reduce the cost to New York taxpayers with respect to the sheltering of asylum seekers, unquote, said Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries, both of whom are New York Democrats, in a statement, and will do nothing to stem the flow of people coming into the city, because all you're saying is, if you call yourself a Venezuelan and can somehow make people believe that you came here before July 31st, or on the hopes that they will extend the policy to a further date on the calendar, which is probably likely. But what do I know? I'm just some schmuck. Couple of minutes for your guys' comments. And if I don't get to anything you say on the chat, I apologize, guys. My voice is waning. Please leave a comment below afterward. Let's see. Frankie Delar. It's a problem because an election is around the corner and this is pissing the regulars off. We'll see. We'll see if it has an effect. I don't know. I guess time will tell. You're a ridiculous lunatic. This will end in disaster or warheads on foreheads. I don't see another way out. Without very stringent and very fast changes in policy, no, it's not going to stop. New York in particular made its bed, and now they are sleeping in it, or not, as the case may be, out on the street. Offering free jobs or fast-tracking work permits is not a solution. They may think it's a solution. It may make them feel good and be a temporary alleviation of some economic situation, but they still don't have enough housing. What kind of job is an illegal Venezuelan immigrant going to get that's going to allow them to live in New York City? They can't afford the rent. So you'll have people collectivizing themselves into, 10 or 20 people getting together and putting their income together to pay for rent for one apartment, overcrowding apartments, causing God knows what other problem. This is not a solution. And on top of that, of course, is the messaging that is sent out to the rest of the world, desperate people, Venezuelans or otherwise, that says, hey, if you just make it to New York, eventually they're going to have to give you a job. They're going to have to give you a place to stay. The law says they have to. The governor, here's a video the governor put out that says, we will house you, we will protect you. They don't have to tell them when it was produced, that video. They don't have to tell you that the governor's changed her tone. She made that declaration. It's out there forever. The propaganda makes itself when you stand on some kind of virtue that you can't back up with action. Renovatio, temporary protected status is just a wedge in the door before later claiming it is wrong and then deport the invader who entered illegally because they've been here for so long. Well, here's the problem. And maybe you missed this part. One article out of the half dozen that I read, one article happened to tell us that the reason Venezuela is so special in this case is because we do not have a treaty with them to send back deported people. So Venezuelans got nowhere to go, and we have nowhere to send them. And what other country is going to accept them on the scale of hundreds of thousands? So, Venezuelans' temporary protected status, it's not going to remove the word temporary. Unless some major laws or policies change, the word temporary means nothing with that declaration. Let's see. Guy in his room. New York City regular citizens should give up their houses and give them to migrants. It's only fair. Oh boy. Oh boy. All right. I'm feeling my voice fade even further. Guys, I'm gonna have to call it here simply because of the mechanics of my vocal cords. But again, if I missed your comment in chat, please leave it in the comments below once the video is posted. I do appreciate it. A couple of programming notes. First and foremost, at 5 p.m. Pacific tonight, Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, I'll be doing the next installment of Book Review of the Vampire with my friend Leonora as we proceed through the novel series, The Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice. We're currently on The Vampire Lestat, and the section we are on is the Devil's Road from Paris to Cairo, I think it's called. And so we just finished up that, and that'll be for tonight. Also, granted that everything lines up and I'm not completely exhausted, I am scheduled to appear at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Midnight's Edge After Dark channel for the first in what is meant to be a new series on that channel of week-ending top 10 type list reviews of movies and discussion and things like that. Still working out the details, still working out a title, but that is going to start tonight at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Midnight's Edge After Dark channel. If I don't make it, the show will still be there, so go check it out either way. But with that, everyone, I want to thank you for joining me for this unfortunately necessary, I think, Border News Digest number 7. Again, let me know what you thought in the comments, what your thoughts are on the situation. As events proceed, I may do more in the near future. We shall see. Everyone, thank you for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things. Even though everyone here is so well behaved, you have very little to do. Everybody who donated, either to myself or to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. Really do appreciate it. Hope you all have a good rest of your Sunday, rest of your weekend. Good week ahead of you. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I will see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.